there's a little bit of a tension between the notion of public trust and intrinsic value, or there's potentially, I would never want to equate ideas about the public trust doctrine with intrinsic value, because the public trust doctrine, I mean, this ultimately comes from the Magna Carta. This is a 1,000-year-old idea. This came from a time where it was really revolutionary to say the deer aren't just the king's deer, they're all the people's deer. And that, so to democratize to all people the value of those animals for people, there is this concept of intrinsic value that whether it be individual animals or wildlife itself, has a value beyond just its use value. And so how do you live in a world that's full of beings that possess intrinsic value, that aren't there just for human use? What does it look like to navigate through a world that's full of beings that possess that kind of value? So the first thing you'd have to do is somebody would say, well, why do you think wildlife has intrinsic value? And so you'd have to make the argument. I think one of the things that we're starting to see with some of the sociological work is that the belief in the intrinsic value, at least of wildlife, is actually far more widespread than we think it is. We think we're starting with the idea that people don't value wildlife that way, and what we have to do is bring them to value wildlife that way. We've believed that without any empirical evidence. We're starting to get empirical evidence now that suggests that that's not true. That about between 82 and 85% of the people, when asked kind of appropriately, do you believe that wildlife possesses intrinsic value, they say yes. So we're not really dealing with trying to convince people that that's the way the world is. It seems like we already believe that. What the problem we have is it doesn't seem like we are being allowed to, or allowing ourselves to actually manifest that belief in the world. And so that's a very, very different problem. So the question for coexistence isn't, how do I get people to see that wildlife or carnivores or wolves possess intrinsic value? They already do. But how do I get them to live a life of integrity where their belief matches their actions? That's a very different kind of problem. I don't think it's a problem that any one discipline or pursuit is going to have an answer to. I think when you frame the problem that way, you realize, wow, we need collaborative efforts that are beyond anything that we have right now. We're very proud of ourselves for realizing that we need ecology and social science. That just barely scratches the surface of what we need when we start to talk about integrity, and this grand integrity project that we might have to endeavor on.